Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone another few seconds to join and get settled in, and then we can kick off the session. Right. Let's start because we have very limited time today. So hi and thank you everyone. Welcome to our Giving Back webinar session today. Thank you for joining us at this hour when I'm sure most of you would probably be on your lunch break instead. And thank you to all our panelists who were extremely kind to join us, even if most of them have incredibly busy diaries. My name is Maria, and I am the Development Health Manager at Queen Mary. In my role, I support the School of Medicine and Dentistry with fundraising for their various needs and areas of work. Anything from research to scholarships, equipment, and capital projects. I also have my colleague Sarah here. Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer for Barts in London. So my role is to be the dedicated Alumni Officer for the School of Medicine and Dentistry. I'm often the first point of contact for alumni wishing to connect with the School of Medicine and Dentistry or to help alumni continue to stay in touch with the school. So we stay in touch with the school through sort of communication channels such as e-newsletters, our social media channels, and during the period of last year, we were able to run some webinars, but normally we would do a series of events as well. And we also help coordinate volunteering between the school and alumni.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm sure some of you might have already joined different William Harvey Day sessions over these past few days, but for the new joiners, William Harvey Day is an annual event when we normally showcase some of our best research successes. This year, however, obviously due to current circumstances, we decided that it was best to host this event online over a couple of days instead. This gave us the opportunity to open it up to a wider audience. And we thought it would be great to use this platform to actually connect with you, our alumni community, and to share a few key workshops with you. This particular one today will focus on the key role that you as alumni can play in supporting and engaging with the School of Medicine and Dentistry, even after your graduation. We have some fantastic panel members with us today who will share a little bit about their own experience at Barts in London, and who will touch base on the various aspects of alumni support and engagement, from different volunteering opportunities to the importance of philanthropic support. So without further ado, I will pass on to Asma, who is our chair today, and who will kindly guide us throughout the session. Asma?
Very many thanks, Maria and Sarah. Welcome everybody to our William Harvey Day workshop. Today we are talking about giving back, the vital role of alumni engagement and philanthropy. My name is Asma Qureshi. I graduated in dentistry in 2006 from Barts and the London School of Medicine and Dentistry. I'm currently president of Barts and the London Dental Club, which is why I've got this pretty medal on today. So I'll talk a bit about that later on. All of our panelists today are alumni of Barts and the London, and one medical student also. So introducing you to our panelists: Professor of Medicine and Education at Queen Mary University of London, Dame Parveen Kumar, Professor Dame Parveen Kumar. Medical students all over the world know Dame Kumar as the co-founder and co-editor of Kumar and Clark's Clinical Medicine, a standard medical textbook used all around the world, which is now in its 9th edition. Welcome, Professor Dame Parveen Kumar. Also retired consultant haematologist, Professor Brian Colvin. Professor Colvin is an active volunteer and a member of the management committee of Barts and the London Alumni Association, known as BATLAA, as well as a trustee of the BATLAA Benevolent Fund. Welcome to you, Professor Brian Colvin. Clinical Professor of Respiratory Infection and Immunity at Queen Mary University of London, Professor Adrian Martino, welcome to you. Finally, a medical student, Miss Maria Vittoria Mastantuono is also joining us, and we're very happy to have her today. Welcome to you, Maria. So thank you everybody for joining our panel. We have lots of questions for each of our panelists. If any of the audience have questions, please put it in the Q&A box and we will try to address these. Dame Kumar and Maria may need to stay only for the first segment. So if you have specific questions for them, please ask those early on. And let's start with Dame Parveen Kumar. Welcome to you. You are Professor of Medicine and Education at Queen Mary University of London, past President of the British Medical Association, the Royal Society of Medicine, and the Medical Women's Federation. Current President of the Royal Medical Benevolent Fund. As mentioned, you co-founded and co-edited Kumar and Clark's Clinical Medicine, which is now in its 9th edition. Dame Parveen, you have a long and successful history with Barts and the London. Could you tell us a bit more about your time here and what sort of career opportunities you've benefited from as an alumna?
Asma, thank you so much. That was very kind of you. Well, I mean, I was saying I've been extremely privileged because I spent my whole life at Barts and the London. So I started off as a medical student at Barts, terrified as I was entering this really rather august community. And it used to be very snobbish in those days. And now I think we've got a little bit more sort of streetwise. So I qualified here, and then I think in my lifetime I've only been away twice, once to the Hammersmith, which is a sort of statutory thing you had to do, and once to do surgery somewhere else. But clearly I wasn't going to do surgery, so I came back fairly rapidly. And then I was extremely lucky to be appointed here as funding in bacteriology, and then went on to gastroenterology on the crack gastro team in the country under Tony Dawson and Michael Clark. It was absolutely superb. I mean, we just had the world coming to us because the research here was just so good. And also we were in the early days of research, and gastroenterology was a new subject as well. So I think that attracted a lot of people. And then, as you say, as my research career was going on, for some reason, I suddenly decided that I had to set the world right by putting a proper textbook on the market. And really, Kumar and Clark's Clinical Medicine became the Barts book. And one of the great things about that is wherever you go, you're recognized, and the hospital and medical school are recognized. So I think it was a great PR, because we did quite a lot of traveling around. And I think, you know, I've just gained so much from Barts and the London. I've probably seen most of the William Harveys through the years, and just seen the standard of research just going up and up and up. And in a way, it'd be quite nice to look at where we went and how research managed to go over the sort of the evolution of the sort of research and the topics. Might be quite a good project for a student or something to do. And then, you know, the thing that one is so lucky about was my research was really funded by my first one was funded by what was then the Barts Charity. Now it's got Barts Charity as a name, and indeed I'm a trustee of Barts Charity. And I think what we have managed to do with the help of Barts Charity and philanthropy from all over, and including the alumni, is set up the most amazing research units. And, you know, it's just such a pleasure to see, you know, Barts and the London flourishing. And of course, Barts Charity sort of supports, obviously, Whipscrots and all the local hospitals, new local hospitals as well. And I think one of the things I was quite delighted to note that quite a lot of the projects in the William Harvey discussions and presentations were really supported by Barts Charity.
That's really nice to hear. Actually gave me a bit of goosebumps as well, actually. I actually think it's really nice that you have stayed with Barts and the London since, as you said, many years. You've always been here, and to have such a successful textbook, which was a standard textbook. And actually, you kind of answered the next question a little bit, but I'm going to ask that anyway. So based on your vast experience in the medical sector, what role do you think philanthropy could play in advancing our research and fulfilling our objectives as a faculty and university? I think you've kind of answered that, but I posed that to you anyway.
Yes, no, I think you're absolutely right. We could not do without philanthropy. And I think one of the things, if I may talk to the alumni and myself, is not only do we want your help, but it'd be lovely if you could also introduce us to people who might want to give money to research for patients with diseases, or open the doors to us for institutions and other funding bodies. Because I think, you know, as shown by the William Harvey, some of the talks today, I mean, we've got the big funders, but we've also got vast charity. And I think to raise the level of research, and you know, we're now we're in the top playing field. You know, it's not you know, we've really raised it to an extremely high level. And I think we need to also tell everybody about it, because I think, you know, we are doing incredibly well as a research institution. We've got some wonderful research workers. I mean, as you saw today, as you said, it was mouth-watering, wasn't it? Just listening to them all.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear. And actually, it makes you very proud to be part of this institution. And every time I tell people where I've graduated from, it has such a high reputation. And I can see the role that the alumni play in this aspect in the research and keeping us at the forefront of medicine and dentistry. So that's so nice to hear from you. On a final note with you, I just wanted to ask you, for the younger dentists and medical students, what aspirations did you have when you were a medical student? Did you know that these were the kind of things you wanted to achieve?
I think when I was a medical student, the aim was obviously patients and seeing patients and helping people. And my intention was to go back to India, which was absolutely true, and I was going back. But then I met an Englishman, and so you had to stay on. And I was extremely lucky with David Lieber, who I married, or who married me, you know, took me on, which was a bit of a problem for him, I'm sure. But was that he, you know, I was a woman. There weren't too many women in the scene. I think there was one professor. I think I was one of 8 women with 160 men. But he supported me, and I think it was the support of him to saying, look, as a woman, you can do whatever you like. You can do what you know. And I think we must tell that to women, because I think I'm a great protagonist of bringing women up until we can be on a par with everything we do with then I mean, I don't see gender, I don't see ethnicity, I see a person and how good is the person, and try and help them achieve what they want to do. And I think we've done that with the Medical Women's Federation. We've done that with all the various women's things that we're having at the moment. So I'm not sure whether I've asked you a question or gone on to a different one, which is probably what I've done.
Not at all. How wonderful to have you joining us. So thank you for answering our questions. If there are any Q&As in the Q&A box, hopefully Sarah and Maria can alert me to those. So thank you very much, Professor Dame.
Can I just say thank you to everybody? I think, you know, it's been a real privilege for me to have worked at Barts for all these years. So thank you very much indeed. And do support alumni, please support us and help Barts charity as well. We need some money. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your message. So we're very grateful to have you, Professor Dame Parveen Kumar. So I'm going to move the topic onto our lovely final year medical student, Maria Vittoria Mastantuono, who is a final year medical student at Barts and the London. And Maria also gained a BSc in biomedical sciences in 2017 and is a recipient of the Scholarship for Excellence, which is funded by alumni. Welcome, Maria. Maria, do tell us about your experience as a BSc student, followed by being a medical student.
Hello, thank you for having me. So, well, to start with, I think I must say that I really enjoyed both, and I'm really thankful that I had sort of the opportunity of doing both a BSc and MBBS at sort of Barts Queen Mary. So academically, they are very different, I think. In biomedical sciences, you sort of, I specialized in cancer immunology, studying sort of very minuscule things, but I also had the opportunity to work at the Blizzard Institute for a year under Professor Daniel Pennington. So that was really an amazing experience to be sort of part of the team and contributing to research directly. And then now I'm training obviously as a generalist, and at Barts we have the opportunity of going to so many departments across London and even elsewhere, doing clinical research. So I think really I've had amazing opportunities in both degrees, definitely.
I think it sounds really good. And I actually wanted to ask you a bit about your alumni funded scholarship, and tell us how you received that and what were you able to do with it?
Well, so I think, so the scholarship I received as a recognition of my performance in first and second year of medicine. And I really think that sort of the study method that I had developed during my BSc really helped me to perform well in my first 2 years. I was sort of really spending a lot of time studying every topic in meticulous detail. And then, so I was very happy to receive this prize. And then I have some pictures to show. So I kind of redirected my prize to do some philanthropy myself. So I contributed to this medical mission to Peru. So I joined a organization called Solidaridad in Marcha, and we sort of built kind of a hospital, I'd say, that would be up for a week in a school in Pamplona in Lima. And we were just providing all sorts of medical and dental care to the local people who sort of couldn't access it easily themselves. And I just contributed to sort of setting it up and just spending time there to help out, let's say. So there's some further pictures to show along usually. Can I move them myself? Yeah, okay. So this was the school, and this was the queue of people that would come to sort of get medical attention. And you can see that around the situation was very sort of, a lot of people, there were a lot of people in need. So it was really, really good experience for me, I'd say.
Thanks for sharing those pictures. That's really nice. It reminds me of my student days. Oh, there's some more pictures.
Yeah, this is the, on the left, you can see the dental setup. So a lot of people were in need of dental care, actually. I was doing triage and a lot of people were really, really in desperate need.
Wow. My ears perked up when you said dental. Yes.
Yeah, and this is me still supporting the organization. This is in Rome, actually, supporting during the COVID pandemic. So really this scholarship, you know, I started with just finding an organization that I wanted to help out, and then it ended up being a thing that I still do now. Here we're bringing some food to people in Rome.
Wow. What was the name of your scholarship, Maria?
In second year, I got one that was the Draper's Prize, which I think is another. So in the first year, I got one that was Scholarship for Excellence. I think that was the name. And then in second year, I had the Draper's Prize. I think both of them were funded by alumni.
That's really nice to see what you did as a direct result of having those scholarships, and very inspiring as well, must I say, may I add. It's really very nice to see what you did with that. And actually, it reminds me of my involvement with the alumni as well, because I got involved with the alumni when I was a final year dental student, when I won the Malcolm Jenkins Scholarship Award, which was for my elective for my project on tobacco cessation. So that helped me towards my elective, and I had to do the presentation for that project at Barts and the London Dental Club, which is a dental chapter of the Alumni Association. And that's how I understood what this dental club was about. And what it was all the alumni from the School of Dentistry would meet and convene once a year, and they would meet and have some continued professional development lectures. They would get together, they would network and reunite. And I really liked that. That was the first time I'd seen it when I went to give the presentation. So I stayed on. I decided every year I'll go to the meetings, and I also joined their committee. So I had an input in their programs. And I just stayed on their committee for the 15 years and was elected as president. In 2020, my stint as president started, and then COVID hit us. So we had to change our tack a little bit. But it got me very, very much involved in the alumni. And I think mine went towards my elective, but I can see that you receiving your awards in the first and second year went towards something very productive for you abroad, where help was needed. So I'm really pleased that you shared your photographs, Maria. Having said that, in light of how the grant has helped you so far, would you get involved with Queen Mary as an alumna when you leave us?
I mean, I think definitely. I think for students, it's very important to have the opportunity of getting some recognition for, doing well. I think it's very motivating, and also, as with me, it pushed me to look for something else that I could do. And I mean, I'm really thankful. I think it's really important that there are these things set in place to sort of award students and make them feel part of a community. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it gives you a sense of belonging as well, because you can see where
definitely.
your awards and scholarships came from. And you do feel part of a big institution with a great reputation. So I do hope you will certainly stay as part of the medical alumni. So Maria, thank you for sharing your photographs and your journey so far. We wish you all the very best with your studies. And I think you may be leaving us very shortly. So if there's any questions in the Q&A box, any further questions for Maria, please do put your questions in the Q&A box. Thank you, Maria. Very grateful to have you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the alumni.
Thank you so much. So I'm now moving on to Professor Brian Colvin. Professor Colvin is a retired consultant haematologist and an active volunteer and a member of the committee of Barts and the London Alumni Association, known as BATLAA. He's part of the management committee as well as a trustee for the Benevolent Fund. He is a former member of the School of Medicine and Dentistry staff, having held the role of Dean for Student Affairs. And in this capacity, Professor Colvin also established the Dean's Benevolence Committee, that is to provide student hardship support. Very big welcome to Professor Brian Colvin. Please tell us about your time at Barts and the London as a student, a former dean, and a former dean for the school, and as a BATLAA committee member. Please let us know.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be on the panel. I'm Brian Colvin. I'm a retired haematologist, having spent my entire career at Barts and the London, rather as Parveen did at Barts, and I contributed to Parveen's book. She Doesn't Take Prisoners, and I was instructed that I had to write something for her book, which of course I did. We worked together really closely and are great friends. I was a clinical student in the 1960s at the London, and I was a member of the UH Rugby Cup winning team of 1968. I was staff president of the Clubs Union in 1980, and the first staff president of the new Barts and the London Students Association in 1985. And I really enjoyed my time as Dean for Student Affairs in 98 to 2008. That's 10 years as Dean for Student Affairs. But I also had a lot of other things I enjoyed doing at the school. I was president of the Barts London Asian Society, which may surprise one or two of you. And I was also president of the Barts and the London Cricket Club. And I've been president of BATLAA, and now I'm a vice president. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about student needs. Parveen was talking a lot about research, but I want to talk about what students need. And my feeling is they need a number of things which can be quite clearly delineated. There's academic aspects, there's personal and health aspects of their time with us, and of course the financial problems which have arisen over the last 25 years as they've become more and more difficult to complete a medical career without getting into terrible debt. So as Dean, my job concentrated on all these aspects, but especially in terms of health and finance, I relied a lot on Queen Mary advice and counselling. Now, the alumni organisation of the old London Hospital Medical Club traditionally helped retired doctors and widows, but in recent years, as you can imagine, there has been a complete change of emphasis, so that now it's students who we allocate nearly all our assistance to. BATLAA has offered annual bursaries for intercalated degrees and electives, and you heard a bit from Maria Vittoria about her experience. And we've also supported students in need through the Benevolent Fund for the last 25 years or so. Sources of assistance are also available from other places, the college itself, the SMD, the Student School of Medicine and Dentistry, and even external bodies such as the Drapers Company, which I think Maria Vittoria mentioned. We've just recently modernized BATLAA's structure and investment program, partly because we had a substantial donation in the will of an alumnus about 5 or 6 years ago. And our benevolence potential is fairly secure, despite the ever-growing problem of student debt. But the Students' Association is always in need of financial support because the grants which used to keep all the clubs and societies going are no longer sufficient. So the school is working with the College Alumni Office to address these needs, and we hope to launch an appeal early next year. So I really want to emphasize student needs rather than research needs in this discussion. Now, there are many ways in which alumni can assist the next generation of students and doctors. Increasingly, our alumni are involved in teaching, mentoring, examinations, admissions, and even this 75-year-old was able to contribute to these before the cloud of COVID-19 descended. So we're now looking forward to more normal times. And when these return, we can look to alumni of all ages to contribute their skills to our community. We also know that the Development and Alumni Office, which will soon have a new director, will be keen to identify those who might be able to offer substantial philanthropic support, as was mentioned earlier, whether in the field of student support or in the field of research. So we really need all the help we can get as we look forward to a very bright future for the school and the college.
I think that's a really nice message, actually, because we've all been through the time of being students, and there are hardships and difficulties for many students for various reasons. So it's very nice to know that there is somewhere where the students can reach out to access help, which is much needed in order for them to complete their studies and to flourish and to become the next generation of alumni. And actually, you've kind of answered a little bit of the question of how alumni can support their alma mater, from volunteering to fundraising. I think we've focused a lot on, in your talk just now, about students and hardship for students, which I think is very, very important. I wanted to bring it back to a point, which is how do you think people will be more interested in supporting the alumni and in supporting students? There are people who graduate and they never look back, and that's been the complete opposite for yourself. You've been involved in many, many things from the get-go. So what do you think would be there to encourage people to stay in touch, keep in touch, and to keep their input and to help support students?
Well, I think the work we're doing at the moment, which is to modernize BATLAA, to engage very closely with Queen Mary, and also to bring along young, recently graduated physicians and surgeons and dentists to take part in BATLAA's sort of management and to publicize that activity is really important. We've recently, for instance, supported with quite a big grant the rites of passage ceremony, and what we want back from that, from the students, is their engagement into BATLAA. And if we can get younger people to take over from the geriatric group that are currently running it, then I think we've got a real possibility of engaging what are actually tens of thousands of graduates who really would like, I think, to offer something back to the school and the college. And our work in the early part of next year will be, I think, to organize some kind of special grant gathering activity. And I think the students will need to identify the things they want, and then we can tell the alumni what is really required, and then maybe the alumni will respond. If you just ask the alumni for tens of thousands of pounds, they may say, well, what for? But if we can identify the things that the students really want and need, then I think we're in business. And having people like Maria, who give us quite clear visions of what is achievable, I think is extremely helpful.
Yes, I completely agree. And I wanted to ask you, what drives you to keep in touch the way that you have, and how have you seen the school change and progress over the decades?
Well, I think that when I came down from Cambridge in '66, it was still a fairly blokish world. There was a lot of drinking probably going on in the rugby club. I always found I was too tired to drink after playing rugby, but I think there were a lot more women available to be friends, shall we say, in London than there were in Cambridge, which was a monastic existence in the '60s. But what we have seen is a tremendous expansion in the numbers of women students as opposed to just men students, a tremendous expansion in the sort of joy of life, I think, really, that students have expressed. I know students have always been very busy and active, but I think students were full of joy and dedication these days, and I'm really impressed with their capacity to develop their lives in a very positive way. We've also seen, of course, a huge increase in the number of ethnic minority students at Barts in London, and I joke in a way about being president of the Asian Society, but they asked me to do it and I was proud to do it. But we've had a tremendous sense of young people from all sorts of ethnic minorities coming into the school. When I came to the London, I came from a East End family who didn't have any experience at university, and my parents, I'm sure, wanted me to be a doctor. Now I think many families in the East End want their children to be doctors for all sorts of good reasons, sometimes not such good reasons, but I think that the whole atmosphere has changed in that sense. There's much more debt than there used to be, and I think that there are also more problems in terms of mental health, perhaps, than there used to be that I recall. So there are a lot, and of course there are all the financial problems of getting through a medical students and dental students training. So things have changed a lot, but I think we've got much more professional. And I think Barts and the London coming together was a very good thing. Parveen and I worked really hard in the '90s to help to create, with many other people, of course, a flourishing and an excellent medical school. Queen Mary is such an exciting university to be part of. This is a real opportunity for us to really make a big success of the medical students' experience and of the university as a whole.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. I think the university, Barts in London, is flourishing, and it's really nice to see that. And it's really nice to see the commitment and dedication of people like yourself. It's been really nice to talk to you. I actually think it's really nice what you said about trying to get people involved. And I think that people can get involved in any way that they find suits them. And I think it's very nice, and it's very important to look back and to keep in touch, because this is kind of like our roots. And it kind of makes me think about how I've stayed engaged with the alumni. And I do think that everybody needs to do it in a way that suits them best, because we're all very different. For example, as I was saying, I have an interest in keeping in touch, and I stayed in touch with the dental club, which became Barts in the London Dental Club, and eventually became president of this club. And we've done a few different things. So we had to change the way that we do things. Normally we have an annual clinical meeting every year. And in 2020, after our annual clinical meeting, when I got inaugurated, we had a complete lockdown, which we didn't anticipate at the time. And we were unable to carry out our face-to-face annual clinical meeting in 2021 this year because of the ongoing restrictions and difficulties in arranging a face-to-face meeting, which made us have to change our tack a little bit. So thankfully, we didn't completely have a gap. We decided to keep the alumni engaged, and with the help and support of the alumni engagement team, I was able to make some webinars. So we had 3 webinars in place of our face-to-face, and we had a huge engagement from the alumni. We had 100, 200 people registering for our webinars. So we had one in March, June and October, and the webinars were complete success. We didn't just give our delegates continued professional development, but they had a chance to network. They joined the webinar, which became a Zoom in the informal segment at the end. So they were able to talk to each other, keep in touch with their classmates, find out what was happening at the dental school. And it was quite impressive because it would have been something we may not have done otherwise. So it was a new way of engaging our alumni. And that was something which was quite an honour for me to be able to do while I was president, but definitely something I couldn't do without alumni engagement team. And I think we're very, very lucky to have an alumni engagement and development team to support our activities because they did a lot of things for us. I think even on a personal note, if you don't want to do something like be big part of a dental club, medical club, you could do something on a personal note. So I think alumni, if they want to have a reunion, they can get in touch with the alumni team and make a class reunion, which I managed to do last year with the help of the engagement team again. The engagement team were able to contact my classmates, email out invitations, reminders, set up the Zoom. So they did a lot of the work, and I was able to have a 15-year reunion with my classmates on our graduation day this year. And that was the very first official reunion we've had. And going forward, we've got a WhatsApp group. We're hopefully going to meet for face-to-face dinners. And it was actually quite good to do it over the webinar, over the Zoom, because we had classmates joining from all over the world, from Greece, from Australia. And so it was much more accessible. So I have to thank the alumni teams, the development team, the engagement team for their input towards that. So for the alumni out there, I would say there's lots of different ways in which you can get engaged to keep yourself involved, but also in volunteering or doing something to help students or to help with research as well. So I jumped in there on Professor Colvin's bit just to say a little bit about how I've been involved. But I'm really impressed, Professor Colvin, with your long-standing involvement with the alumni. I just wanted to say thank you to you.
Of course, that's extremely kind. I mean, my involvement with East London goes back, we now discover, to 1830, and my great-great-grandfather, whose name was Napoleon, was christened at St Dunstan's Stepney. And my grandfather on my mother's side was a bricklayer, and my great-grandfather on my mother's side was a policeman, and they both lived and died in the East End. So I'm afraid I've not moved very far from the source of my family's origins.
You have a great affinity for the university and for the medical school, and I'm really impressed with your involvement with BATLAA, and it's quite inspiring. So I'm very grateful that you joined us today to tell us about that as well.
My pleasure.
So I will move forward. If there's any questions for Professor Brian Colvin, please put them in the Q&A box and we will ask him any of your questions. So I am also now moving to Professor Adrian Martino. So we'll ask if you can put your video on for us. Professor Martino is Clinical Professor of Respiratory Infection and Immunity at Queen Mary University of London. He is currently leading on the investigation of risk factors for developing coronavirus as part of Covidence UK and leading the CoronaVit trial, which is looking to investigate the potential of vitamin D to reduce the incidence and severity of COVID-19 and other acute respiratory infections. So very warm welcome to you, Professor Adrian Martino.
Thank you, Asma. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's really nice to see you. And I wanted to ask you about your current CoronaVit study. That's attracted quite a few significant philanthropic gifts, and it was also featured on a BBC News film. And so there's a sort of volunteering aspect here for alumni to get involved with. Tell us a little bit about your CoronaVit study. Tell us a bit about your research at Queen Mary, and in particular this study and its findings.
Certainly. So I've been at Queen Mary since 2001, when I arrived as a lecturer and to work my way up, doing a PhD, and then finally ending up in a professorial role. My work's always focused around vitamin D, initially around the effect of vitamin D on susceptibility to tuberculosis. But then as our work in the lab illustrated broader effects on immunity to other pathogens, we expanded the work to look in asthma, COPD, and then subsequently COVID-19. So the Coronavit trial is the world's largest randomized controlled trial of vitamin D supplementation to reduce the risk and severity of COVID-19. There are 6,200 participants across the country, all of whom had a finger prick test of their vitamin D status. And if they were randomized to the intervention arms and their vitamin D status was low, then we arranged for them to get vitamin D supplements. And then we're comparing the incidence of COVID-19 and hospitalization and death between the study arms.
It's very interesting, especially at this time, to be doing research like this and to be associated with, is it Queen Mary's that you are associated with then?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been based here for 20 years or more. It's coming out of the Wolfson Institute for Public Health and the Blizzard Institute.
That's really nice that you're associated with us and for so many years as well. And that would have meant that you've done quite a lot of work with us over those years. How do you feel being part of the Queen Mary Institute?
Well, it's great. I mean, there's a reason I'm still here, and that's because it's a great place to work, very friendly. There's great opportunities, especially to work with populations who are at risk of respiratory infection, not just tuberculosis, but other pathogens like SARS-CoV-2 as well across East London. So it's got everything, and that's why I'm here.
It's a very important aspect of research that you're carrying out. And actually, if you started in 2001, then your history with Queen Mary goes back as far as mine, when mine started as well, because that's when I became a dental student and started my dental studies. So I think we were there at the same time. But obviously, I'd say I left, but I never quite left because I've always been part of the alumni. But it's really nice to know that you're still there at Queen Mary's. And tell us a little bit about the role of philanthropy. In what role has it played in making your project a reality?
Well, it played a critical role, really, because alongside the Barts charity. So at the start of the pandemic, we decided that there was a need to do a longitudinal population-based study of COVID-19. And we were lucky enough to get support from the charity to set that up. That's a study called Covidence UK. It's now got over 20,000 participants, and we recruited via a national media campaign and got people to complete an online questionnaire relating to risk factors for COVID-19. And that cohort study then acted as the platform for the intervention trial, Coronavit. Initially, we built on the Covidence platform and put applications into NIHR, Wellcome and elsewhere for support for the trial. But for one reason or another, and I think primarily because a lot of government funding was aimed at vaccine trials rather than looking at micronutrients, we weren't successful in getting funding for that study. And so we got to the point around July or August of 2020 thinking, well, we're either going to have to let this drop or we're going to have to be a bit more creative about how we get support for the study. And so I went for the latter option. And what I did was I went into my local high street pharmacy and took photographs of the shelves of who were selling vitamin D supplements. And then I wrote to every single company that sold vitamin D supplements, asking them for support for the trial. I also got out my black book of addresses of vitamin D scientists and scientists in general who are interested in immunology. And some of them, knowing a bit about immunology and being supportive types, were actually invested a significant amount of money in the study because they had a scientific belief in the underlying hypothesis based on the known immunomodulatory actions of vitamin D, which has both antiviral and anti-inflammatory actions. So it was really this combination of individual philanthropists plus people from the micronutrient industry who came together and formed a consortium which supported the study to the tune of over £500,000 and basically made it a going concern within the space of just a few months. And I'm super grateful to them because without them and without the seed money from Barts charity, which basically enabled this whole project to exist, we wouldn't have this trial.
That's amazing. That's really interesting to hear. And also, I think it also shows that your network is very important, because you had to think ahead and think which companies you could get in touch with who are selling vitamin D, but also your network of fellow scientists to get on board. It just shows what a big network you must have, Professor.
Yeah, I guess I've been working in vitamin D for a couple of decades, so I knew who the interested parties were. I think it has sort of profoundly changed the way that I operate, though, the experience of the last year, in that before 2020, I was absolutely scrupulous in not having any conflict of interest. So I had zero involvement with any company or donor that manufactured vitamin D. In fact, I wouldn't even travel sponsored by the companies for fear that people would think that my research was biased or compromised in some way. I've now just gone to the absolute opposite extreme, because if I had maintained that position, simply there would be no study. And I think it has actually, it's changed my perception, particularly of industry. I think I had a rather suspicious attitude, possibly beforehand, that everybody would be trying to sort of pressure me into reporting this or not reporting that. But that hasn't actually been the case at all. And I've made a lot of good friends, and people have really supported the research. And at the end of the day, they have an interest in knowing whether or not vitamin D is effective for respiratory infections. The role of vitamin D for bone health is very well established. So it's not as if this trial is negative, vitamin D is unimportant. But it's actually been a very positive experience, and it's kind of changed the way I think about industry in particular.
That actually was going to be my question, because of people do sometimes get a bit upset, but I think it's actually telling me that the funding for your project could be make or break for you. So if you've got limitations in funding, you can have the best project research ideas, which could go nowhere. So the funding is essential for you.
Absolutely. And I do respect the people who, especially from the industry, who supported it, in the knowledge that this might work or it might not. But they're prepared to invest in the science and take the result on the chin when it comes.
That's really nice to hear. And also to have such research going on, which is helping to move our university forward, Barts and the London forward, so that we can stay at the forefront of the latest innovations and research in science. So I'm very grateful that you joined us. It was very interesting to hear about your research, and I'm wishing you all the greatest success in all of your research ongoing.
Thank you, Asma, and thanks also to Maria and the rest of the team for their support with funding. I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to add to that. Oh, sorry, Maria was going to say something.
No, I was just wanted to jump in, because I think Brian had a question for you, Adrian, before we move on.
Sure.
Brian, you're on mute.
Brian, do you want to ask it, or shall I find it in the chat?
It's on the chat box, but when I was a haematologist in Whitechapel, many of my Gujarati Asian patients turned up with vitamin D deficiency because of their extreme vegetarianism, particularly from East Africa. And many of them also had very low vitamin D levels. I'd like to know whether your research addresses the question of whether anybody would benefit from vitamin D supplementation, or whether it would be only those who are in some way deficient. Is that known?
It is known from the perspective of musculoskeletal health. So we know that for prevention of the most sort of extreme manifestations of D deficiency in children, being rickets and hypocalcemic seizures, sure, in adults being osteomalacia, that a threshold of around 25 nanomole per litre is the appropriate one. For immunity, it's less well established, but it is something that we're going to be powered to address, because the study's large enough to be able to power subgroup analyses looking at just that question.
Okay, I'll go on taking the vitamin D supplements that my wife arranges for me.
You're wise to do so.
I want to say thank you for that. Thank you to everybody. I wanted to just say how much that has highlighted for me the involvement of alumni in supporting the activities of the faculty of the University of Barts and the London in us moving forward, in investing in research and investing in student life and in participating in student hardship funds. I just think it's also a nice thing to keep in touch and to always look back and stay in touch with your peers. And I think alumni can get involved in any way that they find suitable. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to hand over to Sonal in a moment, but I just wanted to say, as we're coming towards the end of our session, thank you all very much. Thank you to the audience and thank you to the panel. It's been a very interesting workshop. Definitely it's something which I want more alumni to engage and to participate, because I think they will get something out of that themselves, and it will be very beneficial for the students and for the ongoing needs for the university. I wanted to thank everybody who was on the panel. So thank you to Dame Parveen Kumar, Professor Brian Colvin, Professor Adrian Martino, and Maria Vittoria Mastantuno for all of your time, your valuable insights into the vital role of alumni engagement and philanthropy. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chairing. And I would now like to hand you over to Sonal Hathi, who is Global Alumni Engagement Manager. Thank you very much, Sonal. Over to you.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here today, especially some of the things that you've already sort of touched on. Dr. Brian sort of described me to a T. I am the Gujarati vegetarian, low in vitamin B12, vitamin D, East African heritage. So I felt that you were particularly sort of speaking to me then. So that was sort of great to be
I wasn't sure if he was talking to me, actually, Sonal.
Oh, okay. So it's a good one. But no, and especially I think Professor Brian, you sort of touched on some key things, and I think sort of what I'm going to present now is a really nice sort of follow on from that. So I think Sarah's just going to put a presentation on. Okay, brilliant. So one of the things we have been working on sort of as our wider team, that sort of Maria and Sarah sit with us in DDAE, the Development and Alumni Engagement, is something called the Queen Mary Network. It is a platform. It is something that, you know, you have sort of the login details, which you can sort of register as an alumnus or a member of staff and go straight through. Our alumni, I mean, it's sort of there. We're a vibrant global community. We have, I actually think it's now 190,000 former students in over 160 countries around the world, and we know that you know, our former students are leaders, creators, educators, and change makers, and we're sort of very proud of that. And you know, I think that comes with a lot of benefits that we've sort of touched on. We were just looking at some sort of figures before this presentation today. We're happy that at the moment, I think it's about 10% of our users on the Queen Mary Network are from the School of Medicine and Dentistry, which is about 700. So do get on there. You know, you may be able to network with someone sort of that you may know or would like to get in touch with. So what is the Queen Mary Network? So it's our online community platform, which is for all of our stakeholders, including alumni, students, staff, and now prospective students. We have a lot of different functionalities on there. One of the key ones that we're very proud of is the mentoring function. It allows recent graduates, or sort of wherever you are really in your career, being able to reach out to either alumni or sort of alumni that you may sort of be enrolled in, that you're really interested in, and you can it's just light touch e-mentoring. The platform works very nicely in the sense that you can just go through and you can look at sort of people's profiles, because alumni have opted into this service, and then from there you can sort of decide who you want to speak to, and it's an instant messaging service, and then they get sort of prompted on the other side to get in touch with you, and yeah, so you can. We also have something called the Ambassadors module. Sorry, Sarah, can you just go back? Sorry. Yeah, so the Ambassadors module is one of our newest functions, and it allows, as an alumnus, you can opt in to be an alumni ambassador, and what that enables you to do is for prospective students to reach out to you. This is something we're particularly very supportive of, and it's a key thing for us, because we know from a lot of the sort of the work and some of the conversations that we have with our student recruitment team, that students nowadays, you know, they really want to have that authentic voice when they're choosing their institution, and our alumni are key to that. It allows you to sort of network within the community, because obviously all of our stakeholders are on there. So through that same sort of messaging functionality that I mentioned before, you can sort of get in touch with somebody. So maybe sort of a lost school mate that you've not sort of spoken to for a long time that may be on there. We also have a sort of a section on there called chapters, which is specifically sort of special interest groups for alumni and students. And there is a BATLAA chapter, which Sarah and I are sort of working on to really refresh, and hopefully we'll be able to have a lot more of you on there in time. Joining the network is very, very simple. It just takes a few minutes, and the best thing about it is you can just log in with your and sync your LinkedIn profile, and the URL is just there. It's qmul.network. So how you register as an e-mentor is once you're sort of in and you've been sort of approved and you can go straight through, you just basically go to make a connection, and then from there you can just join as an e-mentor. And we've just got a little quote there from somebody who is an e-mentor about sort of her experience. And yeah, I mean, I think she just really recommended it, and was instantly happy to be able to sort of bond with someone and help them build up their confidence. So that's sort of really what we hope to aspire with having sort of more e-mentors on the platform. So it's a very similar function to be an ambassador. So it's all about inspiring the next generation of Queen Mary students. Again, it's just going to make a connection and join as an ambassador. And again, there's a quote there from someone who is a very key in speaking to a key alumnus who's very keen to speak to prospective students and sort of how he's felt his experience through that. And as I mentioned, you can sort of reach out to alumni. So you can see there's just sort of anywhere through lots of pages on the platform. You can just sort of go through the search function, and you can see there on the right hand side. I think it's on my right that how the visibility is. We're looking at sort of people's pictures and being able to select who, if anyone, you wanted to reach out to speak to or for mentoring purposes. And that's it. So I hope that will encourage lots of you to sort of to join the platform, and hopefully we'll see you on there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Sonal. We are coming towards the end of our session. Thanks to everyone on the panel, and thanks to all our attendees who joined us today. Maria and I will post our email addresses on the chat if you would like to get in touch with any questions, or if you think of any questions for our panelists later on, you can definitely get in touch with us. Finally, I'd like to say a huge thanks to our chair today, Asma. You've done a lot for us over the last year in terms of being the president of the Dental Club, organizing events, and your reunion as well, and as well as the session. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me show off my badge, my medallion. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Asma, and thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.